Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bernie Morris is my name, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the end of financial year workshops. We do appreciate your time, and we welcome the opportunity to support you at this crucial period. We have three of our key staff who are going to be presenting to you this morning. So we anticipate this will be, firstly, as part of our agenda, approximately a 1.5 to 2 hour session, and that's totally dependent on your Q&A, which we do welcome. Firstly, we have Kevin Richards, who will be talking specifically on financials, followed by Linda Bell, one of our senior consultants in our business intelligence team, who will be running you through some relevant dashboards. And I'm sure you'll find this very, very interesting. And then Randy Mead will be specifically talking about payroll. So we will be, at the end of each session, I will come back online and you'll hear me asking if you have any questions, and we'll certainly welcome that. So I'm very pleased to hand you over to Kevin now. And again, his topic for conversation will be financials. Thank you.
Welcome to the Financials End of Year Procedures 2014-2015 presentation. The overview consists of the following processes. We'll discuss the system readiness, complete processing, the running of integrities and reconciliation, running and saving of reports, the backup process, rolling of ledgers, check the opening positions, and commencement of processing in the new financial year. There will be manuals which deals with the subledger rollovers separately, and that can be obtained from the download center. So if I think of the end of year financials rollover, it's essentially very similar to the month-end rollover, whereby if you look at the ERP system, the general ledger would be the nucleus, and it will be the main core function, and it has the subfolders or sub-ledgers, namely fixed assets, accounts payable, inventory, and accounts receivable. The reason why fixed assets is linked to the side of the GL, because there's no need to roll the fixed assets module independently, unlike accounts payable, inventory, and accounts receivable. This is why, and this is the sole reason why, the finance team performs the year-end function. So in terms of our approach today, we'll be discussing the interaction of the subledgers, the typical timeline for the rollovers, the general ledger year-end options, pre-rollover checks and the steps to prepare the system, as well as each ledger in more detail and question and answer session. The subledgers. So if we had to analyze the subledgers and try and explain the relationship to that, in terms of the monthly rollover or the yearly rollover in this instance, inventory will be the first module to be rolled over, as dictated by the diagram with the red ball. So it will be the first ball to drop as such. Followed by inventory would be accounts receivable and accounts payable, and then finally general ledger. The reason why inventory is most important is because it's tied in with sales orders and inventory movement. The timing of the rollover, and this by no means set in stone, is typically inventory will be rolled over or closed off from the 30th of June, and balances will be finalized on the 1st of July. Accounts receivable would commence on the 5th of July, and accounts payable on the 10th. In a perfect world, general ledger on the 15th of July, but in reality, that can be pushed out to a much later date, most likely August, September, or when your financial statements are audited. So this leads to the next question: when to roll a ledger or when not to roll a ledger? There's two options really. You can either roll and process prior period adjustments after audit, or lock and roll after audit adjustments entered. Personally, my preference would be to lock and roll after audit adjustments entered. So if you go through the roll and adjust prior period method, there's a few steps to remember. So initially, on the 1st of July, we need to initial June numbers, back up, roll the general ledger, unlock the general ledger. If we use the most favored and preferred method, with the lock method, we initial the June numbers, the 30 June, let the audit take its place, lock the ledgers, unlock the ledger, enter the adjustments, finalize the June numbers, perform the backup, roll the GL, and then play catch up as required. And that normally takes you through September or October. The pros and cons of both methods, the roll method versus the lock method. Let's first go through the roll method. In terms of year-end procedures, the year-end process is complete in June. It's a big plus. Fixed assets depreciation can be run normally from July. The consolidation can be run, but consolidation company needs to be adjusted, unless used in history method, which is not recommended. In terms of reporting, normal reporting in Pronto, however, prior period adjustments are confusing in transaction reports. Now if we focus on the lock method. The downside is the year is not complete until after audit adjustments, which is normally August or mid-September. In 670, you can't run the depreciation schedule until the general ledger is rolled. However, to get around this, you can roll the test companies and use the values for journal entries, and then reverse the journals once the live company has been rolled across. In the same fashion, in 670, you can't perform the consolidation using live sources. However, you can link the live to test. In 720, that's not the case. So as you can see, there's been a big shift in terms of 720 to streamline your year-end functions. In terms of reporting, trial balance can't be run for future year. Must use financial report writer. If you're fortunate enough to be on 710, 720, you can get around this with Cognos reports. Retained earnings and balance sheet brought forward balances are not updated until rollover. This must be taken into account in trial balance. Overall, this is a much cleaner process, although it's pushed out a little bit. Coming back to the rollover method, the ODBC, SQL, and data intelligence reports will not reflect PAs, which is prior period journals, correctly. In terms of the lock method, there's no confusion with the PAs. Generally speaking, the prior period journals are very confusing, i.e. posted into the P&L, and it's probably not recommended. With regards to the lock method, GL translates warnings can confuse users. A typical warning message would be the general ledger is two or more, or could be multiple periods in the future. Simply click OK and ignore that. An example of prior period adjustments. So typically a prior period adjustment would be on the first of the following month, but actually affects the prior period balance. In this example, we have a expense account being affected. So ignore the date. And you notice that it has a type PA transaction date 1st of July. The only thing which denotes the PA transaction in the system is the reference in the details. It says P12/ and the financial year. So this is where the reporting side can be misleading. So on the one side we have the balance sheet account, and the other side entry we have an expense account. And then retained earnings would be the balancing account. So the confusion at the P&L level is that the June balances are corrected, but if I look at my drill down feature in the P&L account, I can't see the movement, so that would cause the confusion. In terms of my PA transactions in retained earnings, there's movement. So as you can see, there's movement with a related transaction in my balance sheet, but that's not mirror imaged by my P&L. So ultimately this decision is yours, but as previously stated, the recommended is lock-in and rolling at a later date. So now we can discuss the finer details of preparing your system, i.e. pre-rollover checks. So we first start off with the major function flags for history options. It's recommended you keep the history for as long as possible. These are the typical history checks. You are allowed 9 years for transaction control history. Sales order archive 99, which is infinite. But you can obviously manage this yourself depending on what's your statutory requirements. If you need to complete all postings for all subledgers. Subledgers being inventory, customers, suppliers, fixed assets, and general ledger. Including that would be elimination company and consolidation where required. But before we do that, we need to emphasize the importance of transaction date. So to illustrate the important dates, these are the typical dates we see in Pronto. Accounts payable, invoice date, due date, payment date. These are all normal dates we're seeing every day. Purchase order will be the order date, due date, and receipt date. The sales orders will be the order date, dispatch, and invoice date. And then accounts receivable, order date, invoice date, receipt date. In terms of the GL batch transaction date, it's the date of printing or processing. Very important. The general ledger major function flag, which mustn't be overlooked, is the posting procedures, which is normally flagged as A, as default, which is the inhibit entry of batch number. This can affect the ability to change the batch or the GL trans date and backdate transactions. This allows the user to change batch date, which is set to A, and set to Y, do not allow change of date for stock transactions. Codes 1 to 9 prevents posting for future periods. A key component is ensuring data is error-free. Check for human and other data-related errors. What does that entail? Running integrities, performing all necessary reconciliations in the system, posting any correction journals, and running integrities again. Locking the ledgers. If processing has finished and you're not ready to roll, you can lock the subledgers using type 4. Lock 4 prevents postings in the current period, i.e. June. Processing can continue for future periods. However, be aware of the impact for locking or rolling a ledger. For example, if you lock the GL, no transactions can be posted to the current period. Locking rolling inventory will prevent updating the sales orders, i.e. pick slips, and AR invoices in CP. Locking or rolling of inventory will prevent posting stock-related invoices and variances in AP for CP. Running and saving reports. Running your reports required for year-end and audit. For example, aging, the accounts receivable and accounts payable age trial balances and balance summaries. Valuation reports, inventory and typically fixed assets. Please note that in both versions 670 and 720, we cannot run valuation reports as a snapshot or in retrospect. We have raised this with Pronto, and I believe they are looking at this in a later version, i.e. 730. Please ensure these are saved and stored in your directory. Timing and issues related to these will be discussed for each subledger in more detail. And finally, run your consolidation if required. Backup data and system files. This means creating copies and restoring for future inquiries. Namely, tape backup, copy live to test company, and creating your year-end backup company, both for financials and payroll. Once all of these are done, you're ready to go and rock and roll. Now we're going to discuss ledger by ledger. Inventory with the first cab of the rank, or as previously demonstrated, the first ball to drop. It's the most clear cut of all subledgers for year-end, in physical terms. The first thing you need to do is complete all postings. Post all transactions relating to financial year in the financial year. For instance, it's got to be the last day of the month, 30 June 2015. This means you've got to dispatch and update all outstanding sales orders where possible, internal picking slips or external sales orders relating to stock items. Process all direct stock issues, i.e. fill issues. Ensure all goods receipts processed and POs are updated. And then lastly, perform stock takes as required and update them into Pronto. Don't forget the ability to perform stock transactions as at the date depends on the GL major function flag mentioned earlier. Step 2. Lock in inventory ledger. Locking the stock ledger will prevent accidental postings to the 2014-2015 year occurring before you roll. This is found in the menu path General Ledger, Period End Processing, Maintain Ledger Locks. As discussed earlier, it's type 4, which locks out current month. As mentioned earlier, the subledgers interrelate. Inventory is second only to General Ledger in terms of its importance. Rolling and locking the inventory ledger will prevent you from posting stock-related transactions in AR, AP, and purchasing to the 2014-2015 financial year. Try to ensure that stock-related processing in the other ledgers is prioritized and completed. Step 3. Running the inventory integrity. Menu path General Ledger, Period End Processing, File Integrity, Inventory Integrity. We need to make sure that all inventory errors are corrected before rollover. We have different frequency modes, daily, monthly, and user-defined. For monthly, it's preferred to use monthly checks, or alternatively, use the user-defined, as it will give you more checks than the daily. Running the inventory evaluation report. This is an audit requirement. The menu path would be inventory reports, inventory status menu, valuation report. This will be also highly dependent if you've upgraded to 720 or 710 because the reports now reside in Cognos. However, you still have access to phase 6 reports. The valuation report will ensure your balances agree to your general ledger, which map to special accounts, IN. Essentially what it does, it takes your quantity in hand, multiply average cost. Very simple. All purchases affect average cost of typical mining companies. If required, you need to run a transaction report to reconcile general ledger. Step 5. The inventory ledger rollover. Roll the inventory ledger into 2015. Period End Processing, individual ledger archive, and then inventory ledger rollover. Click OK to proceed. You'll notice that the period description changes from period 12 to period 1. This also serves as a quick check to confirm that the ledger was successful. So please check the ledger status on the period end processing menu. Debtors. Step 1. Custom ledger processing. Post all transactions relating to the financial year in the financial year. Ensure all invoices are updated and any adjustments notes required produced for text. Remember that no postings occur in the AR until the customer general ledger update function is run. Please note that the processing date on the sales order, which determines the general ledger transaction date in AR, not necessarily the batch transaction date. Very important. And we'll come back to this in more detail. In the below example, we have a batch with transaction date 31 January 2012. But you can notice that the posting date is 20 May 2013. This is what we call a red herring, and please pay special attention to this as it may cause or lead to confusion. After this is done, you need to process as continued and ensure your transaction date is 30 June 2015. This means all cash receipts can be processed, your foreign exchange reval must be done, and obviously ensure that your foreign exchange reval is reversed for all unrealized gain losses. This ties in with the special accounts ex-auth and ex-pos. Step 2. Lock in accounts receivable ledgers. Locking the ledger will prevent accidental postings to the prior period and year. Menu path, general ledger, period in processing, maintain ledger locks. As you can see, it's quite repetitive and it's in the same function, or in the same path. The below screenshot obviously relates to 670. The screenshots have changed for 720. Step 3, customer integrity. You've got to run the integrity. Once again, the menu path is period in processing, file integrity, running customers integrity. The integrity mode would be M for monthly, which flags just about everything. Ensure that all errors are corrected and that the general ledger agrees to the AR balance. Step 4, running of the customer reports. This entails printing customer statements for month or year end of month sales reports, end of month customer age reports. Please note, if you have processed transactions in July, prior to running this, you may need to subtract future transactions from your aging report. Step 5, the customer ledger rollover. This enables you to run the customer ledger into period 1, 2015. And once again, the period in processing would be individual ledger archive, customer archive, end of period. This brings us to creditors. Step 1, ensure all supplier ledger processing. Post all transactions relating to the financial year in the financial year, much like accounts receivable. This means transaction date must be 30 June 2015. Ensure all suppliers for 2014-2015 invoices and payments are processed as 30 June 2015. Post foreign exchange revaluation to the GL if you have foreign creditors. And ensure the foreign exchange reval is reversed as reversed entry against the unrealized gain loss. As with the AR account, module, the special accounts ex-auth and ex-pos needs to be mapped in special accounts. Finally, complete your bank recon as per usual. Step 2, lock-in of the accounts payable ledger. Lock-in a ledger will prevent accidental postings to the period. Menu path, same as previously discussed. General ledger, period end processing, maintain ledger locks. Once again, the screenshot will depict 670. Once again, the screenshot shows 670. The screen has changed in nature for 720. Step 3, supplier integrity. Running of integrity reports. The menu path would be general ledger, period end processing, file integrity, supplier integrity, and run the reporting correct. Please ensure all corrections are corrected and the AP ledger agrees to general ledger. Step 4, running supplier end of month reports. Running the relevant AP reports would be end of month supplier age reports. Please remember that July transactions may appear in the future column. And this is normal. So in terms of your reconciliation process, you need to compare your current due balances and future balances. Please ensure a copy is saved for the auditors. The supplier ledger rollover. Rolling the supplier ledger into period 1, 2015. The menu path is surprise, general ledger, period end processing, individual ledger archive, and supplier archive. Click OK to proceed with supplier archive equals Y. So just to recap where we are. So typically inventory is done at 30 June, balances are finalized, and it's rolled over 1 July. We've now discussed accounts receivable 5th July. We've now rolled over accounts payable estimated 10 July. This leaves us with general ledger 15 July. This brings us to fixed assets, another red herring. Fixed assets. This ledger will be rolled with the general ledger and cannot be held open after the GL is rolled. It is, however, possible to roll the fixed assets register individually before the general ledger end of year. This does not, however, allow acquisitions or depreciation to be posted in future year. Step 1. Fixed assets ledger processing. Post all transactions relating to the financial year in the financial year. This entails all completed acquisitions on the system with status of active. Depreciation will not be calculated otherwise. All disposals and transfers are processed and assets reconciled to the GL controlled accounts, which must be flagged as type F in the chart of accounts. Book depreciation must be run and posted, and tax depreciation must be run. There's no postings, and this is only done once a year. Tax depreciation must be run before rolling fixed assets and the general ledger. Step 2. Fixed assets integrity. The menu path would be period end processing, file integrity, and fixed asset integrity. Run as reporting correct, and please correct all errors. Please note that the asset control GL accounts must be set to type F as previously mentioned for the fixed asset integrity program to perform integrity checks. If it's flagged as A, there will be no system checking and you'll never receive an error. Step 3. Run fixed assets reports including tax reconciliation. The reports would be the asset details valuation report, reconciliation reports, which will comprise of additions and disposals, and please ensure a copy is saved for the auditors. Step 4, the fixed asset rollover. This step is optional and is not usually required. The menu path will be period end processing, individual ledger archive, and asset end of year. Please note, performing the asset end of year function will simply move the current year depreciation to the opening accumulated depreciation. Transactions in the new financial year are still not possible until the GL is rolled. This is only applicable to 670, and as mentioned earlier in the piece, 720 has actually addressed this. Step 5. Purge disposed assets. Purge disposed assets if required. However, it must be stated this step is not recommended. The menu path will be general ledger, period end processing, year-end functions, and purging disposed assets. This is irreversible. This brings us to the end of year procedures for general ledger. These are our recommendations. It is highly recommended that the full year-end process be run in your test company prior to doing so in live. The only way to undo a year-end rollover is to restoring the old data from backup tape. Step 1. General ledger processing. Post all transactions relating to the financial year in a financial year. Sound familiar? Process any accruals, distribution, standing, and intercompany journals as required. Ensure all reconciliations are completed and any corrections required are posted. For example, clear all Z account balances. These are system-generated entries which need to be cleared by manual journal. And finally, post any audit adjustments as required. This would mean leaving the ledger open for the audit to be completed. In terms of step 2, checking the GL settings. The most important setting would be the GLAPPI account. The GLAPPI account is linked to retained earnings, and this needs to be mapped prior to rollover. Check all companies, including source, elimination, and consolidation companies where required. If using Pronto for consolidations, the GLAPPI consolidations need to be split by company code if using one. For example, GLAP 10, GLAP 20, etc. This requires the general ledger major function flag for GL intercompany used to be set to 2. Otherwise, the postings will not be split. Locking the general ledger. The menu path would be general ledger, period end processing, maintain ledger locks. Once again, set the current month period to 4. Step 4. Running the general ledger integrity. Running the integrity report. In 670, please take note not to run the check history balances. This should be always flagged to no. In 720, the screen has changed. The menu path would be general ledger, period in processing, file integrity, and general ledger integrity. Step 5. Checking of general ledger accounts setup. It's important that you check the setup of your GL accounts prior to rolling. This is critical. This prevents balance sheet and P&L accounts being treated incorrectly during the rollover. Go to the chart of accounts maintenance and use the on-screen filters to check the BS flag. Check that all P&L accounts are set to N, and check that all balance sheet accounts are set to Y, as shown in the below example. The below account is a typical expense account and is flagged as balance sheet equals no. Step 6. Check this year-end's control dates. Check in period processing dates. Please note that the processing dates must be done prior to rollover, and the screen has changed with the introduction of 720. The menu path would be administration, system admin, table maintenance menu, period processing dates. Step 7, backup now. After all the other items have been posted, reviewed, reconciled, confirmed, a full system backup should be run prior to continuing with the general ledger. This includes tape backup, copy to test companies, creation of year-end companies. If required, log across systems to create new data sets, which are a copy of your live companies prior to rolling. This can be done for financial year rollover and payroll. The backup companies would be locked or set to inquiry only. Step 8, general ledger rollover. Rolling the general ledger into 2015. Menu path, general ledger, period in processing, individual, ledger archive, and the general ledger end of period. Click OK to proceed equals Y. And please note, all users must log off before proceeding. And finally, you need to ensure that all ledgers have been now rolled over into the new financial year. This can be done in ledger status as shown. As you can see, all the ledgers are in period 1 of the new financial year 2015. This brings us to the end of year procedures after the rollover. Very important, we need to check your general ledger opening position. This would mean running the general ledger integrity to confirm the data is error-free. Running the try balance to check the opening position, i.e. opening balances. The sure way to check this is checking the value of the retained earnings equals balance prior to rollover and prior year P&L. Check that all P&L accounts have opening balance of 0. Very important. And checking that the open balance of balance sheet accounts equals the June closing balances. Update system settings. If using irregular periods, enter the next year's control dates found in the period processing date screen. resubmitting the general ledger integrity to the right sequence. This is very important so that the integrity program will check the new financial year data. And now, as you can see, it's time to celebrate. We've now run all the system checks, and now it's time to enjoy the new financial year. So in summary, what have we covered? We've checked the system setup. We've completed all processing for all modules. We've run integrities. We've ran the month and year-end reports and reconciliation. We performed backup, and we've rolled the subledgers, as well as the general ledger. We've rerun the integrity and checked the up imbalances, and we've resubmitted the general integrity to night sequence. Thank you for your time. This concludes the end of year procedures for 2014-2015.
Kevin, thank you very much for the time you've taken to bring together your financial presentation this morning. Ahead of our click view overview, after which we will be taking a short half-hour break for lunch, would we have any questions, please, from those of you who are listening, because I know Kevin would enjoy the opportunity to support those you have. Thank you. If that's all, thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Linda now.
So today we'll just run through a payroll application which is intended for HR managers, people managers and HR professionals wanting to gain insight into their HR data. The application visualizes and makes HR data acceptable by pulling typical HR data into ClickView. You are able to spot aggregation trends and spot anomalies within the data. This also enables HR departments to liberate their data and let the business take part of the HR information on for their employees. This application assumes that it's mid-year 2013. The data in this app includes employee data, job data, calendar data, organization, and salaries. So the first scenario we will run through is performance tracking for the engineering department. After a couple of tough years for the company, HR is now actively monitoring the progress in the largest division, the engineering department, to make sure the recovery is handled as smoothly as possible. So we will select the engineering department and then just see how the numbers have changed. If we select 2010, 2011, 2012, and then 13. By cycling through the years from 2010 and 2011, we can see that 2010 and 11 were really tough years and that the employee turnover and terminations were quite high. From 2012 onwards, we are slowly recovering, and it's this process we are keeping track of. Navigating over to the breakdown sheet, we are able to see the distributions of employees within the engineering department. We notice that we still have a largely female workforce, and we still have some way to go until we reach the 50-50 target. However, we should expect several retirements over the next 3 years, so we need to make sure that we transfer the knowledge in time. Selecting just the oldest 3 age groups, we see that a large portion of the selected employees have worked for the company for more than 25 years. It's crucial that this knowledge does not walk out the door. So now we'll clear the age group and we'll look at hires and terminations. We want to make sure we are hiring according to the set goals and not losing too much staff to terminations. From here we can see that we are hiring at an acceptable rate and terminations are within an acceptable rate. However, we are still hiring majority of female employees. From this, we can conclude that we are on the right path to recovery in general terms. New hires and terminations are looking stable. However, we need to make sure to action on securing the knowledge in-house before a large portion of the experience retires. We also need to make ourselves more attractive in the job market for male employees. The second scenario we'll be looking at is tracking and managing equality between the genders. As a company, we have a top-level goal to provide equal pay for the same work regardless of gender, sexual orientation, race, and religion. As an HR professional, we are keeping close tabs on the progress, and we are aligning against the goal to be a diverse and equal workplace. From a top-level perspective, we are doing fine in terms of number of women and number of men in the organization, although it looks as if the head office IT and mining departments have a pretty heavy weight of men in their departments. So let's look at the mining department in more detail. When selecting mining, the issue becomes apparent. We have roughly 60% men in the division. On the manager side, things are not looking good either. Middle and senior managers have very few women, while first-level managers are a little better, but it's still not good enough. While gender equality doesn't look that good, we do, however, have a healthy mix of ages. It looks like we could hire a few more juniors or trainees to get few more young people into the organization. Turning back to the gender issue, let's take a closest look at the largest business area within the division, which is the mine operators. Being one of the largest business areas, it has a pretty hefty skew in the workforce towards the male side, with 75% of the workforce being male. Also on the supervisor side, things are not looking so good. Let us focus on this business area for a while. With the largest business area, we also have a larger possibility to make changes in terms of turnover of staff to bring new people into the organization. And it's obvious that we have to work at getting more women into the organization. If we look at the new hires for this department, we can clearly see that the business area are not hiring as they should. If we switch to salaries, you can check if we are at least promoting equal pay for equal work within the business area. We can clearly see that men are still earning a lot more than women within the same business area, but this is still quite a rough picture. So let's drill down even further to compare apples against apples. By selecting only employees, we can now take out the manager's salaries that skew the median. Sadly, the result isn't looking any better. While we are seeing a steady increase for men's salaries, the women's salaries progression is quite stale. If we look at the scatter plot at the bottom of the sheet, it shows us every employee within our selection. We can see that we have a cluster of women towards the 10% mark. To drill down even further into this area, we can select all employees within 10 and 90%. We now have a good comparable selection of employees, even though men still earn roughly 20,000 more than women within the same business area. We started off exploring the progress on equality within the company and identified a severe discrepancy within the mining department. We have an increasing salary gap between men and women, and we also have a hard time attracting women into the business area. We should look into standardizing the salary process to maintain an equal increase between the genders. For the third scenario, which is driving data visibility and transparency within a division. As a manager for construction, I open the HR dashboard to check up on the progress for my division. So far in 2013, we are looking good with a small but steady hiring rate. If we look at 2012, that also looked pretty solid, even though we decreased in FTE to 2013 due to internal transfers. We navigate to the breakdown sheet to get a quick overview of the current state of our division. We have a good split between men and women. We notice, however, that we are gravitating over to a higher average age for our employees than we want to. Perhaps we could hire more junior or trainee staff to replace the headcounts that we have lost this year. Next, we want to look at what our management looks like. So we select all the management levels. The split between men and women are a bit worse, but still within acceptable limits. However, the average age is quite high. We make a note of discussing this with talent management to look into career paths for younger employees to progress into the first line of management. So now we clear the level selections and we navigate over to the salary sheet. Even though we had a good split between men and women in the division, we can clearly see that while men have increased their base annual salary quite a bit, women are more flat in their wage progression. By looking at the scatter plot, we also see that the cluster of women tend to be closer to the 10% mark and with a higher age. So let's look at only the employees, and now the wage progression is much smoother, and we can see that women are catching up on their male counterparts. Still, we have a cluster of women closer to the 10% mark than men. We should look into career paths available for women within our organization and standardize the process to get there. For our fourth scenario, we will look at a phone book. Have you ever tried to find someone in your organization that you have forgotten the name of? You remembered she worked for IT and she managed one of the projects you are interested in. Traditional systems are excellent on finding things you know what to search for. ClickView is excellent at finding things when you don't know what to search for. So you still need to get in contact with the project managers for one of the operational IT systems that you're working on. So you know that this person works for head office IT, and you will see that the divisions have now been filtered down to only the business areas have been filtered down to the business areas relevant to that division. Let's select the business area IT, since they are in charge of project management. This now leaves us with only a handful of people. Now it is much easier to spot the name of the person that you are looking for. All the relevant details are displayed on the screen, or the email button can be clicked if you need to send an email directly to this person. So I hope that gave you a quick overview of the power of ClickView and how it can provide insight into your organization. Thank you very much for your time.
That's great. Thank you, Linda, for the time you've taken to present your ClickView financial and payroll presentation today. Before we break for half hour for lunch, we would welcome, if anyone has any questions, we'll be pleased to answer those now. Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce payroll.
Hello and welcome to Scope Systems Payroll Interview Procedures 2014-2015. My name is Mandy and I'll be going through this with you. First of all, we're going to look up the setup before we start processing. The EMPDUPE file is of course approved by the ATO in all versions of Pronto that we're currently using. We're going to look at the setup now. We're going to specify which part of Pronto we look at for the payer details on the payment summary. The control record is where we specify what it is. So most of the time you'll be using C, which is the company name and address. If you don't have access to the company name and address to check what it's actually got there, you'll need to contact your Pronto administrator and ask them to have a look for you. So if you just check all the details on the company name and address, the phone number needs to be in the format shown here, so 2 digits, 4 digits, 4 digits, the same as the fax number. The GST number is the ABN number, and it also has the company number on the end of it. That's why the 001 is at the end in this instance. You don't have to have it, but you'll need to type it in when you do the payment summary print if you don't have it in here. If you choose to use the payroll number address, one, you need to fill it out because it's generally not filled out. So you go to the wages and salary payroll menu, system payroll administration, payroll parameters, payroll number details maintenance, and then you go to the address on the back of each payroll number if you choose to use this method. Previously, when you were lodging your EMPDUPE file with the ATO by disk, you needed to lodge the EMPDUPE file starting with .AO1 on the end. You don't need to do this anymore because you're lodging electronically now. If you want to delete or rename your old EMPDUPE files and you don't currently have the EMPDUPE file maintenance program, just log a call with Scope Systems and they can talk to you about purchasing it. It just enables you to rename or delete old EMPDUPE files. Previously, when you had to lodge by disk, you needed to lodge your EMPDUPE file starting with .AO1. You don't need to do this anymore because everyone has to lodge electronically. So if you want this program, just contact either your customer relationships manager or support and they'll sort that out for you. The most important thing you need to do before you start any processing is check that your payment summary flag on each pay code is correct and that it exists for the ones that need it to be there. Like, you don't need it on the 6,000 codes and the 7,000 codes, obviously, but the rest of them you need to go through all of your pay codes, and it's a big job if you've got a lot of pay codes, but otherwise it's fairly quick. So you need to check the payment summary field is showing all of your 1,000 codes, all of your 2,000 codes, and all of your 3,000 codes need to have something in the payment summary field. The others, the 4,000 codes and the 8,000 codes are optional. 9,000 codes will need some, so you really need to know what you're looking at. At the end of the manual, you should be able to find a bit of help with what should be there. Otherwise, log a call with support. If you need to exclude employees from the payment summary run who are either contractors or have received exempt foreign income, you need to code an M in the payment summary field on their employee record to signify that you've issued it manually and they're excluded from the run. So you just go to the employee master and on the remuneration screen, just code in an M on the payment summary flag. The fringe benefits need to be coded in manually every year. You should have received these from your finance section. The pay codes, if you usually have fringe benefits, you will already have them set up. Otherwise, you just need to go and enter them. If your system is relatively new, you can call them whatever you like. You don't need to have a pay code for every different type of F.B.T, but you can if it suits your company policy. So you just go and create one that starts with an F, call it what you like, and the payment summary field needs to be coded as F as well. So when you have your F.B.T amounts from your finance section, they should be giving you the grossed up amount. So when you go into maintain F.B.T allowances, you go in through wages and salary payroll menu, year-end processing, fringe benefits and other income, and maintain F.B.T allowances. This gives you a grid that you can copy and paste from Excel if you've got a lot of employees with F.B.T, otherwise it's fairly quick to enter through here. If you enter amounts that are less than the threshold, they won't show up on anywhere. They'll just show up in this table and they won't be showing on the payment summaries. So that's the end of your setup. Now we go into processing. You should have your payrolls at a status of finished. You use the payroll number function to check the status and make sure they're all at a status of finished before you go ahead with your year-end processing. So your payroll list should look something like this, everyone showing finished. The first thing you do is print your payment summaries. You need the report produced during this step to do your reconciliation. So in the manual, there's a guide to each of the fields on here. So generally, you'll run with your payroll ABN number, or if you want to run by payroll number, you need to leave the payroll ABN WPN blank and code the payroll number in the next field. The employee type will generally be all. This includes all your terminated employees. The signing date is up to you, what you put in there. And run it as production. If you run it as a test, it will produce an EMPDUPE file that doesn't have a number on the end of it, so you won't be able to lodge that one with the ATO. So multiple EMPDUPE files is pretty well always yes, and just let it create the next EMPDUPE sequence. If you want to print your signature's name on there, you have to say yes in there and then type it in. The print selection is A for all. If you leave it as U, which is the default, it will only print unprinted summaries. So if you've run any during the year, it won't pick those ones up. The F.B.T limit should be 3773. You don't need the 60 cents in there. And then if you're running 1 or 2, you can put the employee number in, but if you're running it to do your reconciliation, just left all the fields default from now on and make sure your year is correct. The F.B.T year will go according to what financial year you're typing in here. So once you go through that field, it brings you up the supplier details. So this is the details of the company supplying the data to the ATO. The telephone number needs to be in the format 2, 4 and 4, and the contact name is whoever you want them to contact if something goes wrong. The supplier number and the branch number come from what you've got coded on the control record, or it could come from what you've got coded on the supplier details field. The email address is optional. It's just so they can contact you via email if you want. Then the next screen is just a summary of the payer. So generally these two screens will be the same. So if you need to make a change there, you can. Otherwise, just click OK. This produces the payment summary report, which is what you use to do your reconciliation. Customers using Cognos can run the PAYG reconciliation report. If you check the year-end manual, you'll see how to do that. All other customers, you now need to run an earnings year-to-date report for each payroll. The payment summary report will split totals for each payroll. So generally your earnings year-to-date you will get from your payroll reports menu in the additional payroll reports. If you're on 720, you may need to find your Phase 6 reports and find the payroll reports in there. Reconcile your earnings year-to-date report and payment summary report. You add up the columns on the payment summary report, excluding column item S, which is employee influence super. So it could either be salary sacrificed or over the threshold amount. So you just add up all of the columns and reconcile that against the gross earnings, reconcile the tax against the tax. And then you need to, if you've got any imbalances, the first thing you need to do is really check your pay codes, but you should have done that earlier, so you should reconcile. If you don't reconcile, you could try running the pay code report, and that might show you where or which pay code is causing the problem for you. If you don't balance, make the necessary corrections and rerun the payment summary print until there were no errors on the payment summary errors report and reconciliation occurs between the two reports. A manual backup of payroll data should be performed as the year-end process cannot be reversed. So this is optional, but it's highly recommended that you get a backup of the company before you actually perform the rollover. So now we're up to processing the payroll financial end-of-year housekeeping. In the wages and salary payroll menu, year-end processing, payroll financial end-of-year housekeeping. You might have in your menu June end-of-year housekeeping. Just check the function code on the bottom of it. So in here you run it by payroll number, and this procedure must be run before the first pay run of the new year for each payroll. So you put in the payroll number, and if you're running before the 1st of July, you'll get this warning message. So you enter through here, and it'll take you back to asking whether or not a backup has been performed. If you say no here, you won't be able to go ahead with your housekeeping. So you say yes, and you click on OK, and you should get this end of year housekeeping has completed for each payroll. So to check that your housekeeping was effective, you can run your earnings year-to-date report again, and you should have all zeros on the report. Or you can check the earnings year-to-date on the individual employees, and check the payroll year start and end dates on the payroll number details maintenance screen. If your company runs financial year as the same as the tax year, process the company nominated end of year housekeeping now as well. If your company runs, for instance, 1st of January to 31st of December, you run this process at your company nominated year end. The year-to-date details on the employee master show 2 lines for each type of payment. The J is for the June year end, and C is for the company nominated year end. So if your dates are the same, the amounts on here should also be the same. Now you can download your EMPDUPE file that you created when you ran your print payment summaries. There are 3 ways to download the EMPDUPE files. Download using Shell, download using your standard method of downloading payroll ABA files, or using the Scope Systems EMPDUPE file program. This program copies the file to your C drive, and it will create an EMPDUPEs folder if you don't have one there already. This is the EMPDUPE file maintenance program that is available from Scope Systems. You just pick which EMPDUPE file you want and say OK, and it will download it for you. So now we transfer terminated employees to another payroll number. You don't have to do this, but it just saves the list of employees that aren't paid during the pay run printing on the bottom of your payroll calculation details report. So you go wages and salary payroll menu, year-end processing, bulk removal of terminated employees. It's fairly straightforward what you code in here. You'll normally have a T payroll number for your terminated employees, but just check your payroll numbers because you may have something different. Your start and end termination dates are your choice of what you want to put in here, and it will only bring terminated employees who have a termination date within that date range. If you have terminated employees that have not been paid, that will actually remove them from the employee master, so you won't see them again. You'll see their name on the bottom of the report once you run it. This is an optional step. You can use the reset leave accruals function to transfer the values of the remaining column to the entitlement column and set the values of the taken column back to 0. This does not remove the leave transactions in the leave history. If there is a negative balance, this will reset the entitlement to 0 and the taken amount will become a negative amount. The remaining amount will always remain the same. If you are unsure whether or not you should run this step, please contact support at Scope Systems. This is the leave screen before the reset. You can see amounts sitting in the taken and a negative amount sitting in remaining. So once you run the reset leave accruals, it puts the taken back to 0 for the positive amount, and the taken amount for the negative goes in as well. And you can see that all of the remaining figures have stayed the same. There are new tax tables for the coming year, and they will be made available on Pronto Plus for download. To together with instructions on how to install and update them. Alternatively, you can contact Scope Systems and request we install these for you. This will be chargeable at standard consulting rates. Once you have received the tax tables, you need to add them to each payroll number. So we've come to the end of it. Complete all open payrolls in progress, get a backup of your data before processing, run the payment summary reports, run the earnings year-to-date reports and reconcile these two, run the year-end processes and load the tax tables to the payrolls for the new year. So we have a few other little things to go through. Printing amended payment summaries. Amended payment summaries must include text in the header to specify that they are amended. It is only required if you have already submitted the EMPDUPE file to the ATO and need to make a change. Please raise a call with Scope Systems to have this program installed if it is not installed already. You should find this in Wages and Salary Payroll menu, Year-End Processing, Maintain Payment Summary Amendments. All you need to do is just enter the employee number, the year that you want to use, and the notational text will come up as amended summary. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much for your payroll presentation this morning. Ahead of any questions, I just want to alert you all to the fact that we have a follow-up workshop environment available to you on the 30th. That would be where we would welcome you to come into our office for what will be a 4-hour session on a demo payroll data set to get actual experience in the processing and learn tips and tricks from our experts during the processing of that payroll data. So again, that's happening on the 30th. It's a 4-hour session and we would certainly welcome your inquiry. Secondary to this, we would be more than happy to arrange specific site visits to you, whereby having one of our experts on site to assist you with the processing. Please inquire about these and do not hesitate to talk specifically with one of your point of contacts or indeed your account manager, and we will arrange a time that is convenient for you. So unless anyone else has any final questions, thank you very much for your participation and we wish you a good day.